We're now going to shift to Ethiopia, Abayan, where I believe we have our Ethiopia Bayan lead. Dr. Bilay, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Champions for Food Security activity in Ethiopia. Most specifically, I'm curious to hear, you've had a lot of challenges in Ethiopia the last couple of years, and among them, there's been some very tense relationships between the Ethiopian government and the US government, right? So how has the government of Ethiopia reacted to USAID's C4FS program?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think Champions for Food Security is a policy system strengthening technical assistance activity, as you said, language, designed to support the policy, agriculture and food system policy in Ethiopia. And the activity, when it started, we faced with two challenges. One is the conflict, the internal conflict that affect the relationship between US government and the Ethiopian government. And secondly, the COVID-19 was, the infection rate was high. It was very difficult to meet with different actors in the system. Given this situation, both the Ethiopian government and US government took action. The US government side, they said they paused the economic support to the government of Ethiopia, and we got guidance that don't work with the government, don't directly work with the government. That was the guidance we got from the USAID. And then from the government side also, during that conflict situation, due to the position that the US government took, they were not happy and they were not trusting us to engage with our activity. So we have been challenged both sides, don't work. A policy work without the government doesn't address anything. So having faced with these challenges, we have to find a creative way of furthering the agenda of the Champion for Food Security. So what we did is to engage the different actors locally. We have tried to design a rapid assessment of stakeholders to know the landscape, the policy landscape. Through that process, we managed to introduce the activity and also got the buy-in from the different stakeholders to engage with our activity. Secondly, we have informally engaged one of the state minister. I will call it as a champion for our activity, to advocate about the project and introduce the project to the higher level policymakers and also the regional sub-national level. He did his job, and that assisted us in terms of introducing the activity without having the kickoff workshop. And thirdly, we established a multi-stakeholder institutional architecture assessment advisory group that consists from the private sector, academia, and policymakers from the government, like the Red FS group, even government of Ethiopia, ATI, Agricultural Transformation Institute, the professional association, and CSO that have a member more than 400, and the CGIR that with me, Dr. Abdemariam is here, and the chairperson of the private sector, he was the chairperson to lead this group. So this group was very instrumental in engaging the different actors to support the IAA assessment process. After all this groundwork, I think the C4FA successfully facilitated the joint high-level meeting between USAID front office, including the mission director and the Minister of Agriculture. We facilitated that meeting to happen. And in that meeting, I presented the C4FA's objective, focus area, and further collaborative areas. So we got the buy-in and trust from the minister himself. And from that time on, the mission and also the Ministry of Agriculture become very friendly and engaged in the policy support and implementation process. Now, both of them are closely working, and also they start to demand us. The Ministry of Agriculture and ATI demanded C4FS to support them in the area of the pluralistic extension system proclamation validation meeting. That is the support they requested. And secondly, the US side, USAID is requesting us to go work closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and identify the priority policy areas that we need to support them. So now the situation improved, and now we are working on both sides for the benefit of facilitating the different actors' engagement in the policy formulation and implementation. Over to you on this question. Thank you.
That's really impressive to hear how you've been able to navigate the very, very tense political sensitivities in Ethiopia to improve relationships between the US government and the government of Ethiopia. I'd like to hear now from a very active participant in your advisory group, Dr. Kassa, who's representing CGIAR. And I'm aware that historically in Ethiopia, a lot of policy formulation processes were very top-down. They were led by the government. And I feel that a lot of what the C4FS program is doing is really facilitating a mindset change from business as usual in Ethiopia. I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, Dr. Kassa. How is Policy Link supporting this shift from business as usual in Ethiopia?
First of all, I think thank you for having me in this meeting. I just want to stress that Ethiopia is not an easy country to work in when it comes to policy and policy influence. And I very much appreciate the work that Dr. Belay and his team are doing. Especially, the tradition has been, the policy is made by the government, and anything trying to influence is seen as kind of interfering in. And I think as a result, much of the research activities have been very limited to innovations that increase productivity rather than, working modalities, policy instruments to bring about high-level, impact. So when Dr. Bala invited us to join, then within the CG system, we are so many of us trying to influence the government in one way or another, but we failed to come together. So I thought, what Dr. Balai was trying to promote, the C4FS would actually create that platform for all of us to have a shared view of what we want to say to the government as well. And I think it brought together, the academia, the private sector, rarely consulted when it comes to policy making. So having the private sector guys coming and talking in terms of their challenges and opportunities they see, etc., was great. And for us also from the research community, we tend to kind of provide evidences from our sectoral or disciplinary point of view, which hardly convinced large institutions like the Ministry of Agriculture, where they have so many issues to consider as well. In our case, we worked very closely with the forestry development, and we have this good experience of engaging with them for over a decade. So we actually are very much invited to help them design forest laws, forest policy strategies. So I thought we could also share that one to the agriculture, to the larger group. Within the CG Center, I guess what we are trying to do is also to make sure that the private sector is heard. They play the major role. The government is also given refined, debated, evidence, so that we don't give them, at times we give them contradictory even signals. So we thought, this platform, through the advisory system, if we could screen, if we could really debate among ourselves, and then send it off to the ministries, then it will be great. And I think the way that Dr. Balai has been trying to do, he knows the system, he knows the government. He has been part of it. I think he had that social capital and political influence also to be heard. I think he's maneuvering it very well. For us, I think it is a huge opportunity, because we feel that there are some high-level policy issues that need to be addressed, not only by the government, but we also think that the USAID could also hear. Much of the influence, what we know USAID here is as a relief guy, not for research, not for policy. So we think that we would also influence, USAID. And I think the other, aspect of, this effort is also to influence how, USAID could also influence policymaking through, through their influence of, huge support to the country. So I think so far we because of lots of commitment, some of us could be here and there, but I think they managed to pull us together. They have been insisting that we attend regularly, review, attend meetings, attend the study plans, hear the findings of the policy studies also. So I think we are happy, and we will continue to support and assist Dr. Bala in any way we can. But we think also we have something to offer to the larger group, because at the end of the day, we also see that there is a huge challenge of being sectorial within the government institutions. Like, we don't see the bigger picture at a landscape level. So the water guys don't really work with the forestry guys don't work with the agriculture guys. Now, I think, for example, forestry is under the Ministry of Agriculture. We think this is also an opportunity so that the forestry and agriculture policies could be aligned. As early as 2017, there were studies where, people were pointing at that in Ethiopia, like, it was not only in Ethiopia, but also in Tanzania, Ghana, that agricultural and, forestry policies were heading for a collision. And we hardly bring these actors together to talk to each other. So I think this is particularly important for the C4FS to kind of broaden also the discussion to go into higher level sectoral meetings, so that we can have policies that are not contradictory to each other, that would lead to plans that are not creating trade-offs between sectors, but more synergies, and that also bring in communities in the private sector to have a say in that one. So I think they are playing a very good role, and we're happy to be part of it. Over to you.
Thank you. I think it's really great to hear from the Ethiopia team. I was in Ethiopia last year, and I know how challenging it was for the agriculture sector, and I know how challenging it was for the private sector, trying to navigate how they will have any influence at all on policy issues. So the fact that you've been able to do so much in a relatively short period of time at a very difficult time in Ethiopia's history is indeed a huge credit to you. So congratulations to Dr. Belay and Dr. Kasa for being leaders in this process.